Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's session. We're very pleased to have you with us for this important discussion titled Healing Future Case Management for Children Associated with Armed Groups and Armed Forces. My name is Ahmad Salem, and I'm the CAAFAG advisor at War Child Alliance. I'm also joined by my colleague Sandra, and together we co-lead the CAAFAG task force of the Alliance for Child Protection and Humanitarian Action. We will be facilitating today's session and guiding you through the discussion. Today's webinar is part of a broader series led by the CAAFAG Task Force aimed at expanding learning and dialogue on critical topics related to the protection and reintegration of children associated with armed groups and armed forces, or what we call usually CAAFAG for short. Our focus today is on case management, which is, as you know, is a cornerstone of child protection work that becomes particularly complex when working with CAAFAG. And as you probably know, CAAFAG children face unique and often deeply rooted challenges, including stigma, rejection, threats to their safety, and major barriers in accessing education, psychosocial support, and health services. For the caseworkers supporting them, this means navigating high-risk situations that require not only technical know-how, but deep empathy, flexibility, and local engagement. That's why I wanted to shed light on this issue today by hearing directly from practitioners working on the ground in South Sudan and Nigeria, who are actively managing these cases and developing strategies tailored to the context. Our objectives for today's session are twofold. First one is to explore the specific challenges caseworkers and CAAFAG children face throughout the case management process. And the second is to share practical examples and lessons learned from different operational contexts, specifically in South Sudan and Nigeria. The session will last about 60 minutes and will include moderated panel discussion, followed by a Q&A, question and answers. And a few quick housekeeping notes. We're offering simultaneous interpretation in Arabic, French, and Spanish. Please click on the globe icon in Zoom to select your preferred language. You can type your questions also for questions like if you have a question, you can type your questions into the Q&A box at any time. Sandra and I will be monitoring the chat and will bring in as many questions as possible toward the end. This webinar is being recorded, and we will share the recording and any relevant resources with you afterwards. Now, please allow me to introduce our three expert panelists who bring years of experience in child protection and CAAFAG case management. First, we have Musa Gambo, who is he's a project manager at Grow Strong Foundation in Nigeria. Also with us is Clement Malish, who is the project manager at Plan International South Sudan. And last but not least, we have Felix Ojok, who is the CP MHPSS advisor at War Child Alliance in South Sudan. Each of them will offer reflections from their respective contexts and give us a deeper look at what case management looks like in practice when supporting CAAFAG children. Let's dive in, and I will start with you, Clement. We'd love to hear your insights on the following. First, what are some persistent or unexpected challenges caseworkers face when supporting CAAFAG children? Over to you, Clement.
Thank you so much for your question. Once again, I'm called Malish Clement Jacob. I work for Plan International South Sudan as a project manager. So referring to the question, definitely caseworkers face a number of challenges in the process of supporting CAAFAG cases. So we have persistent challenges as well as unexpected challenges. So let me peruse through these challenges one by one. First of all, with the persistent challenges, we always know stigma and social acceptance is an issue. So CAAFAGs sometimes face social ostracism, which affects the caseworker's ability to work with the community to reintegrate them, including, so this leads to feelings of shame, isolation, and depression among them. So in some locations in South Sudan, CAAFAGs face discrimination even during provision of services, making it pretty difficult for caseworkers to coordinate the services for the CAAFAGs. Secondly, we also have mental health issues. Caseworkers who may not be counselors by training often find it hard to provide adequate mental health support to CAAFAGs experiencing post-traumatic stress disorders, anxiety, and depression due to lack of resources or trained professionals and culturally appropriate interventions. Thirdly, we also have resource constraints. So lack of adequate financial and human resources due to the shrinking funding environment, coupled with high expectations from CAAFAGs for comprehensive support programs, jeopardizes the relationship between the caseworker and the CAAFAGs due to unfulfilled expectations. And in South Sudan, unsustainable livelihood or assistance to the CAAFAGs always made some of them to rejoin their groups for survival. In addition, we also have complex dynamics around the socioecology of children. Caseworkers sometimes even fail to trace the families of the CAAFAGs for reunification and reintegration. Besides, caseworkers sometimes come across families that are unable or unwilling to accept these children back home due to fear of unresolved disputes, thereby dragging the reunification and reintegration processes. So Plan International was able to provide foster care to those whose relatives could not be found, as their capacities were also being built to enable them live independently when they turn 18 years. Another challenge has also been associated with the weak stakeholder collaboration and coordination. So it is sometimes difficult to carry out CAAFAG case management due to the weak collaboration and coordination among stakeholders. So sometimes information about the presence of CAAFAGs trickles in, but it could not be verified for action to be taken just because of that lack of proper coordination. While we also have unexpected challenges, and one of them is the cultural norms and the gender roles. Gender stereotypes always create unexpected barriers for CAAFAG boys and girls. For example, boys may feel pressured to conform to traditional masculine roles that discourage vulnerability or emotional expression, while girls may also face additional stigma related to sexual violence experienced during their association with the CAAFAG or CAAFAG groups. So caseworkers always need to be sensitive to these cultural dynamics when dealing with the CAAFAGs, because gender stereotypes may hinder CAAFAGs from opening up for support. In addition to that, we have a context-specific challenge. We call it age set classification and rivalry among groups. So in addition to cultural norms, one of the communities in South Sudan is organized into age sets or groups such as 7 to 11 years, 12 to 16 years, 17 to 20 years, 21 to 30 years, and the elderly from 31 years and above. And these groups, especially the younger ones, from 12 to 30 years, stay in their camps and are normally armed. So the cultural significance attached to age sets creates an environment where competition for dominance and respect is inherent. So as younger age sets mature, they often seek to challenge older groups for leadership roles and even privileges. And this leads to conflicts as they vie for power and recognition within their communities. And this makes it difficult for caseworkers to engage with such groups in CAAFAG case management, as the caseworker may be accused of spying for another group. So the CAAFAG framework relies on cooperation among community members to address issues such as child protection and family support. So when the age set tensions escalate into violence, it becomes increasingly difficult even for case managers to provide the necessary interventions. Another issue is also to do with the policy barriers. It is increasingly challenging for caseworkers to undertake CAAFAG case management where a site has not been designated by the government as a CAAFAG assembling area. So this makes it pretty hard to address the specific needs of CAAFAGs. And additionally, also bureaucratic hurdles can delay access to necessary services or impede efforts to secure legal protection for these children. In addition, we also have changing conflict dynamics. The fluid nature of conflict environments means that caseworkers must constantly adapt their strategies based on changing dynamics on the ground. New conflicts may arise or existing ones may evolve, impacting the availability of resources and safety even for both caseworkers and the CAAFAG. Currently, there is a report of recruitment of child soldiers going on in Upper Nile state of South Sudan due to the increasing tension between parties to the 2018 agreement following the clashes between government forces and the local youth affiliated to the opposition in Nasir. I think my colleague Ojok can attest to this. And then we also have the lack of coordination among agencies, and all these multiple issues always makes it quite challenging for caseworkers really to do case management to CAAFAGs. Over.
Thank you so much, Ramon. Like you've covered lots and lots of challenges, and this just only confirms that um, the need for this webinar was really spot on, and that we definitely needed to go and talk about this because obviously the kind of challenges that caseworkers working on CAAFAG children are very much different and more complex than working on other cases. You touched on lots of these challenges, but some of them are not like some of them are not necessarily related to CAAFAG. For example, the MHP, the psychosocial distress, the depression, the psychosocial issues faced by CAAFAG children can also be shared by children, for example, survivors of sexual-based violence, for example, or maybe children who are unaccompanied and separated. But the rest are mostly definitely unique, almost unique to CAAFAG children. But then in the beginning, you mentioned something about the severe stigma. Um, but the stigma is impacting the children themselves. Is it also extending to the caseworkers themselves, working with them?
Definitely, because of the multiple challenges in the environment that even the caseworkers are not able to address themselves. This also creates stress for the caseworker himself or herself, because given an environment where the CAAFAGs themselves are denied services because of some of the things they did in the past, where the community looks at them as a source of evil. This definitely makes the work of the caseworker to fail. And by so doing, what do you think is the impact? This backfires to the caseworker because as a caseworker, you are supposed to ensure that the child under your care goes through the case management steps and gets the services he or she needs so that he or she is reintegrated in the community and lives a dignified life. But should the caseworker experience difficulties, what do you think will happen? I think the caseworker himself or herself also becomes distressed because she is not like in one way or the other being seen as not achieving. So that is how the whole stigma and also distress affects the caseworker or social worker in a way. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Clement. And I'm taking you back to the issue of identification of these CAAFAG children. You suggested challenges accessing and identifying these children. So how do caseworkers usually identify CAAFAG children, and do communities play a role in the identification or referral of these children?
Thank you. In the context of South Sudan, just like unaccompanied and separated children and other vulnerable children enrolled for case management, CAAFAG children are also identified through the existing community-based protection networks or structures through the referral pathways and also through the local authorities. So these stakeholders play a great role in identifying and referring CAAFAG cases to organizations including Plan International for case management and even provision of alternative care, family tracing and reunification, and monitoring of the reintegration process. So upon receipt of information concerning a CAAFAG case, a caseworker is assigned by Plan International to document the case and manage the case management process, including family tracing and reunification, after laying a safe ground for the caseworker to pick it up with the support of the Child Protection in Emergencies Officer, the project manager, and the CPIE specialist. Therefore, caseworkers in our context do not approach CAAFAG cases directly like other vulnerable cases without a prior higher level engagement with the community leaders or the local authorities. Because of the sensitivity of CAAFAG, it is always imperative that high level engagement happens first, then thereafter, once the organization, the management of the organization picks it up and then assigns a caseworker to take this case, then thereafter, after introduces this caseworker to all relevant bodies so that this caseworker now has a smooth ground for him or her to pick it up. Otherwise, where I am, where a caseworker starts following up a CAAFAG case anyhow, this may also prove to be a risk. So this is what always happens in our field locations where we identify and manage CAAFAG cases. So it starts from a higher level, and then it descends to the caseworker so that he or she is able to pick it up when the environment is safe for him or her. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Clement. This shows that how complex the process is. Like what you're describing is just adds another layer of complexity to the process, and which also shows how vulnerable CAAFAG children are and how remote they are from accessing help. Like it's not easy for them to access help the way other children might be able to access help. Thank you so much. This is really eye-opening for all of us. Now, moving on to my last question to you, what kinds of threats or intimidation have caseworkers, and from your experience, what threats and intimidation your caseworkers have experienced in this work, and how do you ensure the safety and well-being of those frontline caseworkers doing this often difficult and sensitive job as you've described?
Thank you so much. Caseworkers always face enormous threats or intimidation as they do their work. One of them includes physical threat. So caseworkers can be exposed to direct physical threats and the potential even of abduction by members of these groups who oppose their efforts to reintegrate the children. Secondly, we also have aggressive behavior. CAAFAG cases always exhibit aggressive behavior, even sometimes to caseworkers in some locations, because they themselves even do not want anybody to interview them. In some locations, they accept it because they know the circumstances under which they were recruited. But in some locations where it becomes a culture, then it has always been challenging for these children. In most cases, they don't want them to be called the CAAFAGs. They want them to be called abductees. It is something very complex. And then we also have community backlash. In some locations, caseworkers may face hostility from community members, even for supporting CAAFAG cases due to the wrong things they did, hence creating fear of retaliation, even in caseworkers to pursue the cases. And we also have issues to do with the unexploded ordinances, threats from unexploded ordinances, and the explosive remnants of war. As you already know, we still have the conflict going on. We have most of these UXOs and ERWs littered around, and caseworkers have to access rural areas, villages, in order to respond to needs. So there is a threat of injury, death, psychological distress, and even a restricted movement, which impacts negatively on caseworker's ability to perform his or her role. And then we also have stigmatization by other community members. Caseworkers may also experience stigmatization within communities for supporting CAAFAGs who were at some point viewed as a negative element in the society. So this also even puts the life of the caseworker at risk. So how have we ensured the well-being of caseworkers or frontline caseworkers? What we always did is we adhered to safety protocols. And this involves getting access clearance from the authorities for child protection team, including the caseworkers, to be able to travel to the field for case supervision and follow-ups, even including documentations. So this also includes informing the community chief about your activities so that he or she can be able to support in case unexpected circumstance emerges. So this is one step we always take to ensure safety of the frontline caseworkers. Secondly, we also do regular support to caseworkers, and we do this by keeping open communication with caseworkers and encouraging them to share any challenges first for support. So by so doing, a case conference can be organized internally or externally where participants of the working group can share experience, propose workable solutions to address the challenges. So this also energizes the caseworker and keeps his or her morale and spirits high for the role. In addition, we also ensure a work-life balance where we allow caseworkers to take leave or some days off to enable them refresh their minds and get rid of the work-related stress and the burnouts. And by so doing, this also re-energizes the caseworkers to keep on delivering. And then we have situational monitoring that we also do in form of spot checks. So we conduct situation monitoring before traveling to the field by collecting information from people on the ground before embarking on any field trip. So this helps to minimize risks and also guarantee safety. Lastly, we do trainings. So we do training of caseworkers on psychosocial support, psychological first aid, and self-care and stress management strategies. So caseworkers have also been trained on Be Safe and explosive ordnance risk education. So by so doing, caseworkers are well prepared to face any adversity in their work and take appropriate actions to prevent harm. So all these are strategies were put in place to ensure that as caseworkers go to the field and do CAAFAG case management, at least they are protected in a way. Thank you and over.
Thank you so much, Clement. That was really powerful and very insightful. Thank you so much. It only shows how much investment we should be doing to caseworkers to ensure that they are doing a job that is really very complex and challenging. Thank you so much again, Clement. Now moving on to Felix, our second panelist. Felix, building on what Clement shared, what persistent challenges do caseworkers face when supporting CAAFAG, and what essential skill sets are needed, especially those skills that aren't often covered in existing guidance or training?
Well, thank you so much. Thank you so much for my colleague Clement, first of all, and thank you for bringing up all this. Casework, in line with CAAFAG, is a very complex situation to handle.
Indeed.
Just taking it from the point of concern that my colleague Clement explained, from the hearsay, you understand the complexity of the situations to deal with. It's not just a simple management of the children who have been under arms. Okay. Coming back to your question,
Yeah.
First of all, these CAAFAGs comprise of both boys and girls. Most times, many people do believe that when we talk about these CAAFAGs, we necessarily referring to only the boys. And then most people think that these are only children who have been active in war front. We
True.
then tend to neglect the idea that these are even children who have taken different roles associating with the armed forces and armed groups. Okay, so the challenges are quite
Yes.
diverse. Okay, when we look at one, the security risk, they often
Security.
operate. Okay, the casework operate in conflict zones, and then they face threats from armed groups. I can relate this from the experience of what is happening now in my country. You have to take care of the children, and then you also have to take care of yourself as a case worker.
Indeed.
So you manage yourself, and then you manage the client you are managing. This is something that we have to deal with. And then, as a case worker, you have the art of humanity, and then you consider the life of the child that you are trying to help, like to manage. And in these situations, you put also your life in risk. The other thing also is on resource constraint. Most times, our case workers are limited to access the resources and services available that could help them in their work. Okay? So the resources that are mandated to aid smooth management of the CAAFAG related cases are not there. Then when you take it from what my colleague Clement mentioned, we then have to solely rely on the existing community structures
Okay.
to make sure they handle what they have. Now, when you talk of the essential skills that are expected of the caseworkers, for countries like South Sudan, for example, I would say even Africa or East Africa, cultural sensitivity is one of the mandated skills expected of a caseworker. When you look at a country like South Sudan with about 64 different ethnic groupings that are diverse cultural practices, for you to become one good social worker and handle things appropriately, you have to be so much sensitive in the cultural diversities. This is going to help you in the awareness of local customs and practices that prevails within the different cultural backgrounds. The other skill is conflict resolutions. As a caseworker, they need these skills to mediate and resolve conflicts within communities. At, at most points, our caseworkers are a central point because other communities look at the CAAFAGs as the perpetrators. Locally, I would say they look at them as killers. Others look at them as betrayers.
Wow.
And then as a caseworker, they have to weigh and balance to make sure that these children are then put in the right situations that are not exposed to what they take them for as perpetrators. So then if they don't have these skills, they then end up doing more harms than
Wow.
goods to
That's
this
very
community.
powerful.
Yeah. And there are other skills that I may not like to dwell, like the advocacy, trauma-informed care, But then I wanted to highlight much more on the contextual skills that most people don't take it so much into consideration. Okay. And then
Indeed.
others would be advanced skills, could be like psychological support,
Mm,
you know, like my colleague also tried to mention a little bit. These also affect them. And then as a group of social workers, in one way or the other, they also don't only offer psychological support to the CAAFAGs themselves, but also even to fellow case workers. Because there are some complex cases that other people look at left, right, center, and they don't have the right way to approach until you have specific skills. And my last under these skills could be community engagement techniques.
mm,
You have to have effective methods to engage resistance communities in understanding that these children belongs to the community and they are our children. We then have collective responsibilities in putting wrongs into the right, and then let them understand, let the community understands that two wrongs doesn't make one right. The child has been forced, have been put in a situations to undergo situations against his or her will. And then when we go ahead, stigmatize, chase away, and then treat this child as the most useless in the community, we are
mm.
doing further harm. Thank you so much. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Felix. This is really very helpful and insightful. Yes, while we do sometimes, I mean, we obviously train caseworkers on casework and sometimes psychosocial counseling. We rarely train them on conflict and cultural sensitivity, like you said, community engagement and dealing with stigma. I think these are very important aspects that we don't always include in uh, the capacity building of our caseworkers. So we definitely need to pay attention to these from now on, because indeed, as you mentioned, we don't want to end up doing more harm than good for these children. That only shows how the level of complexity working with these children is at a different level indeed. Now, moving on to my next question, which will be the last to you, is what barriers do caseworkers face when helping CAAFAG children access services like education, health, or psychosocial support? And are these services ready to receive them? And how do you manage when key services are unavailable or inaccessible to CAAFAG? Like they might be accessible to other children, but not CAAFAG. So are there no alternatives? I mean, and if there are some alternatives, what suggestions do you have um, to fill that gap? Over.
Okay. Well, case workers are subjected to various barriers. Okay. Um, I would even first of all talk about infrastructure challenges. Okay.
Yeah.
We don't have like proper healthcare facilities. We have limited access to schools
But that's
and
in
health.
general, right? I
Yeah.
was maybe trying to focus, and maybe we're a bit behind in time. So if we can focus on the challenges that are specific for CAAFAG children, like yes, we know that
Okay.
education services are, um, limited in certain contexts, but in many contexts. But then we want to focus on the challenges for CAAFAG children accessing these services, like like education, health, etc., other services.
Well, if I think if I heard you well, and then we were talking about challenges that are facing the CAAFAG children, right?
Exactly. Yes, that's correct.
Okay. These CAAFAG children are prone to several contextual challenges. First of all is the cultural challenges. Some cultures expect the children to still continue being part of the warriors. And then that means they are yet prone to further association with armed forces and armed groups. Not just these random gangs in the communities or in towns. Okay? Here, what I mean is, with the prior association with the armed forces and armed group, they are looked at as potential children to offer further roles in the ongoing conflicts. And that is one of the challenge. And then the other challenge is, I would say, motivations that come from the military personnel or commanders or leaders who, I would say, offer false information and be like, okay, if you join, we are in position to award you these ranks, award you this offer. You see that? And then there are other false information like, now is the time that you give it your everything for the country, for the love of the country and for the love of the community. And then the children ends up getting recruited. The other challenge that we also still have is dealing with the specific understanding of some communities. A lot has been done in regards to awareness raisings, community dialogues here and there. But we have to understand that the CAAFAGs are dealing with challenges of acceptance in the community. Sometimes, even when these children are reintegrated, reunited, within their mindset, they are alone. They are alone by themselves. They are yet, in their mind, they are yet with the armed forces and the armed group. Because
that's very interesting.
Everything within the environment indicates that they are not accepted. And that is the biggest challenge. Sometimes organizations who are handling these kind of cases only do with the numbers and statistics and figures, but then the actual thing is on the actual situations that these children are undergoing. Okay.
Thank you so much, Felix. So so sometimes we think we have. Sorry, were you saying something?
No. What I wanted to say is, as intervention partners, we sometimes don't have to just look at the obligation of the donors in accomplishment of the task, but then the impact, the actual impact onto the child. This is what I meant. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Felix. These are really thought-provoking points indeed. And yes, in many cases, we think that we've reintegrated a child, but indeed, like you said, we haven't actually done so. Like we've just recorded them as one beneficiary, and then in reality, there is still a lot to be done for the child to be properly reintegrated in the community. These are very helpful insights. Thank you so much, Felix. Now, moving on to my last guest, who is Musa. Musa, over to you now. To what extent does family acceptance and support help the reintegration of CAAFAG?
Hello, thank you, Salim. Thank you for having me. Like you said, we are racing against time, so I have summarized this important discussion from my own end. I think the question you asked was, to what extent does family acceptance, and separation leads to the effectiveness of reintegration, right?
Yes.
All right. So first of all, when we talk about reintegration of children associated with armed forces and armed groups, we are not only talking about reintegrating them into the community, but we are also talking about reintegrating them into their own family as well. So the first stage for those acceptance is at the family level, when the family fully accept the person it opened doors for the community to be able to trust them again. No one will feel comfortable trusting somebody that has not been trusted by his own family.
That's a
Therefore,
great point.
therefore, it fosters sense of belongings. They feel loved, and then they also feel valued, that their family cared for them, and that will be complemented by the support of the community themselves. So it gives confidence to the community to be able to participate in acceptance of the integration process. And then it promotes healing. The acceptance of the family promotes healing of the trauma and the psychosocial, distresses they have suffered. You don't know the kind of life they have undergone. For instance, in the context of Nigeria, most of children associated with armed groups are mostly the ones that are either rescued by the government forces, or either by chance they were able to escape from the bushes. Some of these, some of these children were actually born in the bush. They were born there because the conflict in Nigeria has been ongoing for more than 13 years. Therefore, we are looking, and for us, it's actually more difficult to reintegrate girls much more than boys in this context. And the reason is simple, because you find somebody that was kidnapped in their community, married up to 3, 4 different people, and at the time she's coming back to the community, she's likely coming back with 2, 3, or 4 children.
Wow.
That complicates the issue, because those children serve as a reminder of what she has gone through. So, we had cases where family accept either their daughter back, and they reject the children, because all they know is their daughter, not the children that were born, and those children were actually victims of those circumstances, that happened. And then thirdly, it encouraged social reintegration. Being accepted by the family, it encourages social integration of the community. Like I said, when the family accept them, support them, value them, and make them feel loved, it gives confidence to the community to understand that, okay, these guys are trusted by their families, we as a community can also trust them. And the issue of CAAFAG is obviously, cross-cutting, but more especially, like I said, is more concerned with girls. We have situations where families have rejected their daughter because the daughter has refused to, reject the children she has come with. It's either you accept her with the children, or you reject them both. So locally, the government have been doing so much effort. There are instances where the government has places where you can be able to accommodate, CAAFAG, returnees, and some homes where humanitarian partners, can come in and provide so much support. So I think on these questions, like you say, we're racing against time. I would like to stop here, and then maybe if there are questions, or the next one, I would like to take. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. So going back again on stigma and community resistance, like what strategies have you used to overcome the stigma and community resistance for the reintegration of the FAC children? Thank you, Musa.
So first, we have what we call community-based child protection committees, the CBCPC, as part of our programming in child protection. So those CBCPCs are made of a group of people, including religious leaders, community leaders, women leaders, youth leaders, and other relevant stakeholders and influencers. Those people are more of an entry point that you get contact them at level of your community engagement in the community at the inception of your project design as well as implementation. Those people helped you in identifying the cases of CAAFAG in the first place. And then they also serve as ambassadors when it comes to sensitization. Social workers and auxiliary social workers, as well as community-based social workers who are trained on social integration, economic reintegration, as well as case management, support in sensitization in the community, the first step, and then positive parenting sessions. In the course of conducting positive parenting sessions, you target parents that include those that have lost their children to the crisis and conflicts. It opens doors for them to understand that there is still hope that our children will come back to us. So eventually, if these children end up coming back, they are already aware of the situations that have undergone. Locally, we have very good success stories where parents have accepted their children back here in the Northeast Nigeria. Some are supporting them and escorting them to places where they are accessing specialized MHPSS services. child-friendly spaces. You find parents watching their children, for them, it gives them joy that these guys are gradually coming back to their normal senses and enjoying like their normal parents. So sensitization is one of the strategy. Positive parenting is one of the strategy. Child-friendly space activities that are culturally accepted and relevant to the children especially. And then, of course, psychosocial support provision. And then most importantly, community engagement is very key, because it balances the whole equation, where you have a situation that community leaders and religious leaders are powerful people and influential, that can be able to bring together the parents of people that have rejected somebody and then the person, and they can be able to provide some sort of alternative dispute, and then kind of a dialogue between caseworkers, parent, and then distance. And their cases mostly are referred by either the CBCPC committee, or either, if identified by caseworkers, they refer to CBCPC committee for further engagement before full case management. As you know, CAAFAG are mostly a bit difficult to open up in most cases at the beginning stages of case management. But once they open up, you get to understand that these are people that needed to be loved, cared for, and then all will be well, though it takes time. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Musa. So do you think that sensitization, working with the child protection committees and community structures, would also overcome the issue of accessing services for CAAFAG children? So it would help CAAFAG children access education, health, and other services. Am I correct?
No, actually, yeah, it helps, but the challenges depends on the kind of services that you want them to access. For instance, when it comes to education, you find sometimes the school itself have, in some instances, can reject, because not everybody can feel, okay, we are okay with this person. There is a level of mistrust that this guy just come back, this person just comes back, and we don't know his true intention. Either will he be trusted?
Mm,
Is he still working with them? Is he serving as a person that can take our secret and communicate back to them? These are some of the issues where, and then there is the issue of stigma within their peer group, especially in schools. Therefore, you
mm,
find, and then sidelining, social exclusion becomes part of the problem when it comes to issues around health. If somebody is constantly being stigmatized in healthcare, in the hospital, he cannot be able to go to the hospital to access service. If he is constantly being stigmatized in school, he will lose interest in attending schools. And all those things, we are countering them by establishing school clubs where the children themselves are taking the lead by sensitizing their fellow classmates on why these people are victims and why they should accept them, and they should study together, and they should bring them closer. These are also some of the additional strategies that are actually being used, in addition to many that works in our own context. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Musa. These are really great insights on the challenges, the specific challenges that CAAFAG children face, and then by extension, caseworkers working with these children. Um, so there are lots of challenges for caseworkers to help CAAFAG children access services, correct?
Yes, yes, that is correct.
It's not like the other groups of children.
Can you come again, Salim?
So it's not like the other groups of children. So, for example, I want you to zoom a little bit into health. Do you think it would be challenging for these children to access health services?
Yeah, I mean, there is the challenge when it comes to accessing health services. One, not all child protection partners are also providing health services. So, in most cases, in the case of accessing service for CAAFAG, as you know, CAAFAG require kind of multi-sectoral intervention, multi-sectoral services. They
Yes,
require
but
health
sorry, Musa,
inspectors.
I was talking about referring the child to health services. So when you refer the child, do you think the health services would not accept them?
No, no, no. Actually, we don't have those cases here in Nigeria, because health services are public institutions, and public institutions do not stigmatize. So even at the point where stigma comes in is at the point of, you are a patient, I am a patient, and you have many patients at the waiting room, and you find instances where one, two, or three people actually know this person, and they know where he is and where he comes from. These are where you have problems. But as an institution, health institutions do not discriminate, and they have actually been very supportive, and they have been very good partners with humanitarian partners and other NGOs, because most of our referrals goes to them. In specialized cases, we refer to psychiatrics in some cases, while in some cases, you refer directly to health and medical facilities. And thankfully, donors do support through child protection partners, provide funding for medical, for these children under case management to access medical services, especially some of the work we do in GSF. We do provide medical services for children under case management. You have separated children where you have children that are unaccompanied and separated, and all those things sometimes may require medical services, and you can only do that in conjunction with medical facilities, of course.
Thank you so much, Musa. I can't thank you enough for all these great insights. These are very helpful for everybody listening. And thank you also for your flexibility on the time. So now we have 10 minutes left for your questions. Can I ask you, please, to put your questions in the Q&A feature in the webinar panel in Zoom? And the first question is a question from Karina. She's asking, could you please share the range of age CAAFAG children who are being involved and supported through your services? I think this is a question to all of you. Let me start with you, Musa. So what is the range of age CAAFAG children are being involved and supported through your services?
Age range, I think, as determined by case management, is 5 to 18 years, which is the age for in Nigeria when you have somebody who is at the age of maturity.
So maybe the question is like, what are probably the usual ages that you are encountering?
Okay, yeah. I understand. So as we all know, some of these strategies used by the armed group is to recruit adolescent children who do not have full control of their brains and their minds and can easily be manipulated. So most of the cases we have, and we have case managed under CAAFAG, we're looking at the age of 9, 10, 11, up to 15. But you mostly don't have children. Honestly, you hardly see somebody in this kind of category be, higher than the age of 18 years. You have 9, you have 10, you have 11. When in the case of girls, you even have as small as 7 and 8. Most of the, girls that have been used as suicide bombers in the Northeast Nigeria are adolescent girls. More than 80% of those that have come as suicide bombers.
What specific age range? So would we say like 14 to 17?
Yes, I think, yeah, 9 to 15. Let's say 9 to 15. Yeah?
So as early as 9, as young as 9.
Yes, as early as 9, you end up having CAAFAG. Yeah, that could be very destructive, actually.
Okay, that's really awful. That's really bad. Okay, there are a few questions related to the safety in case management. Now, what are some recommendations to ensure the safety of case workers and children? Musa.
I like this question. Thank you, Salim. So for us, Grow Strong Foundation, as an organization, one of the things we take very serious is the safety and security of the people we work with, of course, being at the front line. So case workers especially, we do what we call detox, a training that brings them back from the front line and detox them, train them, because sometimes the people providing MHPSS service also need MHPSS themselves. They needed the PSS themselves. So, providing them with leave, providing them with detox training, and ensuring that we have a designated MHPSS officer in the organization that deals with staff-related complaints and staff-related issues. As a case worker, you want to talk to somebody, we have an MHPSS officer designated for that component, and we also have, a medically certified a doctor who also works with us, who is also listening to our staff and providing them with psychosocial, services. And then we also do security and safety training at the end of every 2 months, just like PSCA training at the end of every 3 months. That is quarterly. But for safety and security is every 2 months, where security officer, and then before we deploy staff, we also ensure that we have the up-to-date current situation of those communities that we are working with. We work with local leaders, we work with security agencies, and other organizations update like INSO, International Security Organization, and other UNDSS update that we get from partners. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Musa. And I think also Clement mentioned lots of also strategies to deal with the risks and to ensure the safety of caseworkers, including training on cultural sensitivity and conflict sensitivity, conflict resolution. Also, like doing some safety auditing for locations before doing visits, like close coordination with security teams. I think these are very essential and important aspects of also getting the permission from the authorities and also the community, like getting some buy-in from the community before you embark on doing case management for these children is also important and contributes to the safety of the caseworkers. So thank you, Musa, thank you, Clement, and thank you, Felix. Now moving on to another question. And of course, Felix and Clement and Musa, like you can tell me who wants to comment on this because it's a general question, it's not context specific. The question is, how can the quality of case management services be improved given that caseworkers often have limited qualifications and technical expertise to effectively manage the complex and sensitive needs of children formerly associated with armed groups? So how, despite all of these, limited qualifications, because as you can see, the work is very demanding, and then we should admit that not all caseworkers have this. How can we improve this quality of case management?
So Salim, I think I would like you channel this question to the first speaker. I think he has discussed some of these critical issues, maybe to answer this question. Thank you.
Thank you so
Or
much,
maybe,
Musa.
maybe if I can come in.
Yes, please go ahead,
also,
Felix.
Clement made mention this a little clearly at the beginning, that he made mention that if it's possible, we have to do routine capacity building to our caseworkers. Why do we do this? This is to make sure that we leverage their levels of understanding and then impart on step by step adequate knowledge that could help them in broadening their approaches and understanding in case management. The other thing that we could do is always link up with the interagency standing committee, either at the regional level or even at the global level. They have a lot of resources that could help also in making the caseworkers understand on how to take care of certain difficult approaches. It's only the obligation of the managers and their supervisors in contextualizing some of these approaches and ways forward. When we do this, this is going to help them improve in their skills and knowledge in handling cases within their localities. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Felix. I think this is
Maybe,
really helpful. Yeah. Clement, go
yes,
ahead.
maybe, yeah, if I can also add. When I was speaking, I talked about a context-specific situation of age sets or age groups in one of the locations. And always what happens here is in that location, if I belong to the age group of 12 to 16, I cannot listen to someone who is below my age. You get that context-specific issue. So in that case, it means when we are recruiting case workers, let us also be mindful of the age categories, so that if there are some some specific context issues like that, and then we can be able to deploy a specific person of a specific age group who will be liked and listened to by that particular group. So you can see that without taking that into account, you will always fail in your casework. So my colleague from Nigeria talked about a number of issues, including Felix, where he talked about conflict sensitivity. Yes, in the past, most of the trainings we have been doing were more of the case management processes and some other general child protection issues and partially psychosocial support issues. But then here, where you go to an environment where you also need to manage conflict, it means even we need to take our case workers for some kind of conflict management training. Without that, they will end up not doing anything. Because now there, in that context, you need to manage conflict first so that it opens for you way to be able to access the CAAFAG children wherever they are, and
Thank
to
you
be
so
able
much.
to, yeah, in order to be able to, mobilize the resources, the services needed, without which it becomes pretty difficult. So we need to revise the approach of training or capacity building the caseworkers so that we give them whatever they need to be able to advance the work of case management. Thank you, and over.
Thank you so much. So just to wrap up, thank you so much to all of our panelists for their time and expertise and great insights. And thanks to all of you for attending today's session. Just, I think there are a couple of comments that are worth noting. Abigail is saying that caseworkers also have their own expertise as CAAFAG or maybe people who survived the conflict. And she's asking that maybe in our next discussion, we can also hear from CAAFAG children themselves. Yes, Abigail, inshallah, we will try to continue this. But I would kindly ask all of you to continue this interesting conversation on our community of practice. You will find the link in the chat. So we will continue this discussion. I'm going to start a topic on case management for CAAFAG, and please feel free to share your lessons, your challenges, any questions you might have. And thank you everyone for joining us today, and we hope to see you at our next webinar. Thank you so much. And apologies for not being able to respond to all the questions, but in the community of practice, we will. Have a great rest of the day, and see you soon. Stay tuned. Bye-bye.